So you've clicked this video because you think I'm an idiot, and you might be on your way to the comments to voice that opinion, hitting the dislike button on the way. But before you do all that, just hear me out for a second. Battlefield, as we've said in a previous video, is a very complex system, and balancing it isn't really as simple as a lot of the community thinks. And over the past few weeks, I've been unfortunate enough to go through some of the feedback on Reddit, and I feel like I have to remind everyone what happened to Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1 was great, might be your first thought here, and in certain aspects it really was. In terms of atmosphere, map design, sound design, and overall polish and completion of the game. I mean, that game was really something else. Unfortunately, I am a sucker for good fundamental game mechanics, so I hardly played it after the beta. And ever since that beta, they basically passed the steering wheel over to Reddit and created a perfect example of what happens when you listen too much to community feedback. Some key examples were the movement nerfs to sliding, which took away methods of outplaying your opponents, along with the cancellation of Ammo 2.0, which would have improved the game if the community ever gave it a chance. These changes largely happened due to the crying on Reddit, and it shows that the loudest voices are not always the majority, and even if they are the majority isn't always correct. I remember Marble Duck talking about this idea of majority rules being a flawed way to balance games, and it's absolutely right. At the end of the day, you must hire people who are competent and have shown that they can make great balancing decisions in the past, and you just have to have confidence that they're actually doing the right thing regardless of what whinging you see on Reddit. But what if they haven't made the best decision? Well, this is where internal testing comes in, and I was actually really excited thinking that DICE was going to do this with Battlefield 2042. Obviously they do internal testing sessions within DICE, but what I was really excited about was the idea of the Players' Council. So during the lead up to the beta we heard about this, and it was basically the idea that we were going to have veterans who were going to be handpicked to play the technical test, and then those veterans would form the player council. This sounded really amazing, like the whole idea of having, let's say, 300 people, just really good players, veteran Battlefield players, being able to playtest the game and give feedback before the general public gets their hands on it. It's a really good idea. However, it was scrapped without mention, and as we know, the tech test was actually just given to random people in a raffle-like fashion. I mean, this just resulted in pretty much anyone getting access to the game, and I know a lot of the people that ended up playing weren't even really Battlefield players. They couldn't give a damn about the game, and they weren't really likely to go and actually make an account on the EA forums and give feedback and all that kind of stuff that they actually want you to do. So, I mean, as unfortunate as that is, we can move past it. I do think that this player council has to be formed, and it has to be utilized for future patches. So my whole idea here is still to use community feedback. So you get a bunch of opinions and a bunch of ideas from the community. These are, highly upvoted things on Reddit, just ideas that the community has to improve the game. And then with those ideas, you can take them into a closed test environment with the player council. You can get opinions on the ideas, whether they're good or not, and the good ones will be filtered through and they'll actually make it towards the game. In my opinion, that's a really great compromise of actually getting community feedback, helping the game with that community direction, but then also having some sort of filtration system to make sure that the bad ideas don't ever make it towards the game. This obviously would require a lot more effort. I mean, there's that whole extra step of getting all these players willing to do this testing for DICE, probably for free, but I think a lot of people will be willing to do it, myself included, just to see a better Battlefield. An example of this would be the new specialists that we've seen, so I could talk about any of them, but let's be real, no one is playing any specialist other than Jisoo Pike, who we should probably just call CU Pike, because that bitch is seeing you no matter what. I mean, wall hacks in the hands of a casual player are really strong, but they might not be extremely overpowered if you don't know how to use them. But I can guarantee if you give those wall hacks to someone who can abuse movement to the fullest extent, you're getting killed in one frame and there's nothing you can do about it. It's so overpowered, and I cannot believe they put wall hacks in the game. Sure, we haven't seen it to the full level of how it actually plays in game. I'm sure they have something to counter it. I want to say that they must have something to counter it, and it can't be as overpowered as it looks, but if it is, I mean, that's really messed up. And this isn't even taking into account her passive ability, where when she's shot, the position of the shooter is revealed to her, so I can imagine this being used in a bunch of ways, but the most powerful way I can think of would be intentionally shoulder peeking someone to take a bullet, and then as soon as you take that bullet, obviously she gets the wall hacks, so then you go back behind cover, hit them with a jump shot. There's pretty much nothing you can do against that. I have a handful of other things that I want to test as soon as the game comes out, and if any of these things I'm thinking of actually work, the game becomes very broken very fast. Anyways, to wrap this one up, the moral of the story basically is that the majority is not always represented by the loudest voices, and even if it is, sometimes it's not correct. So you need a better way of figuring out which updates will help the game, which updates will hurt the game, and hopefully if DICE can figure that kind of thing out, then we're going to have a really, really good game onto our hands. You just have to remember that people always act in selfish ways. An example is that a lot of sniper mains and people who just play sniper are asking for the snipers to be buffed without thinking about any of the impacts that has onto the other part of the game. So let's just say on Orbital, you have those 5 players who are always sniping on top of the tower. If you buff the snipers by 20%, every single one of those snipers becomes 20% more annoying. So obviously it has to be done by someone with no bias, and the best way of doing that is just having a big council of players, bunch of different perspectives, and then you get the best of both worlds. Anyways, I hope you guys all enjoyed. Let me know what you think. The title is pretty controversial, so hopefully if you watched it this far, you at least might agree with me, or maybe you won't. And if you don't, just let me know why in the comments, because I'm definitely down to hear it. I understand that community feedback is extremely important, and I agree with that, but there must be some way of doing it better than it was done in the past, because it's actually killed the Battlefield game. Anyways, I think I've said what I've had to say. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like if you agree, dislike if you disagree, subscribe if you want to see more. We're pushing for that 100k, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.